Okay. Now, one of the things that YouTube realized was that if they can only get X amount of traffic to their site, and since they're in the business of selling advertisers to advertise on their site, they realize that they've got a fixed number there. Now they can go off and make that a little bit bigger, but if they really want to make a lot of money, the best way to do that is to give people the ability to embed videos from YouTube on their websites, which then they get all that website's traffic too. And so they and all the other most of the other video sharing sites have made this process of embedding quite easy. Basically what you're doing is you're taking a piece of code and putting it on your site, which then goes and grabs the video from YouTube, for example. I'm just going to use YouTube as an example throughout this. It goes and grabs the video from YouTube and actually shows it with YouTube paying the bandwidth bill, which can be a really big thing if you go viral. You know, YouTube pays over $1 million a day in bandwidth. And so if you got something that goes really hot, you probably don't want to be paying the bandwidth on that. And so let me show you some things about embedding, and then we're going to talk about reasons why you might want to not embed and do it yourself. So, all right, so here we're back to this coupon mom, the one where we talked about with the Hidden Valley Ranch up in the corner and the pre-roll that ran before. Now, for every YouTube video, over here on the side, there's a little section that gives a URL that allows people to link directly to that video, and there is a piece of embed code. If you click on this little symbol right here off to the right, I don't even know what that is. It's a gear, maybe.
It's a gear, man. Settings,
okay.
I guess.
All right. So if you click on the gear, it's going to pop down a box. And so this is the URL embed that was just there. I've clicked on this, and it's popped down this box. And it allows you to be able to make some selections. Do you want to include related videos? Do you want to show a border around it? Do you want to enable privacy enhanced mode, which I've never been able to figure out why you'd want to do that? Do you want to allow them to play it in HD, and then it gives you some color options? And so here in this next one, I've clicked 3 of these options, and notice when I've clicked them, it looks slightly different than it used to. And so here, let me just show you this. So here's what it used to work. Now I've clicked that I want to put a border around it. I clicked the blue down here, and I've said I want it to be in high def 16:9 mode. And so now it's showing me what it's going to look like on my page. Once you've got all that done, then what you do is you click right up here in the embed box, and you copy what is in there. When you do that, it gives you a really nice piece of code. You don't need to understand anything about that code. All you need to do is paste that into your website where you want it to go. And because of all the settings that you made back here, now as you paste that code in it, all those settings are already embedded in that code, and so it just brings it up and it looks nice. So I strongly recommend that you are regularly embedding code from these engines onto your site, letting them pay the bandwidth and them do the things. But let's answer that specific question. Why would you ever embed when you could just use a technology like S3, or even if you got a high enough bandwidth, high enough serving bill, you can just do it yourself and not even have to pay S3? Well, there's several reasons for that. You probably remember this. We talked about it at the beginning. Remember this number right here, the 45.13% of all the traffic that comes to videos from video sites. If you're not there, you're not getting that traffic. And so you probably, in many cases, don't want to be using S3. You want to use YouTube or a Viddler or another account to do that for you so that you don't have to pay that bill. And so you can get this 45% of traffic that you wouldn't get otherwise. But there's some other reasons too. It increases your viewership within the video engines. So let me describe what I mean by that. One of my favorite strategies is to, when I make a new video and I put it up on YouTube, for example, when I blog about that, I don't put my S3 video. Even though I know that I could, I don't do that. I actually embed my YouTube video. Why would I want to do that? Well, because then everyone who comes to that page and clicks on the video, it increases my viewership count on YouTube. And one of the main things that YouTube uses to determine who ranks top for a search on YouTube for a given subject is the number of viewers that they have had in the recent past. And so if I've got a whole bunch of people who watched my video on my blog, embedded on my blog, that contributes to my YouTube numbers, and I do better there.
And it also gives you a link from your blog back to your YouTube video.
That is correct, which increases your positioning within the search engines.
Right.
Okay. All right. Secondly, if your video is only available via S3 and you don't embed link allowing other people to do it, the likelihood of you ever going viral with that video is almost nothing. But if you are on a YouTube, then people are finding it, easily embedding it in their own site, and so it significantly increases the probability of your video going viral. It's also cheaper. Andy, you've had some videos that have been seen by a lot of people.
Sure.
You've had some pretty big S3 bills, right?
Yeah, yeah, at one point was hosting about 1,500 videos a month on S3 and had well over 1 million what are called S3 measures access in terms of gets. They're called gets. Had over 1 million gets. Well over 1 million gets. I forget how much it was, but yeah, huge S3 bills.
Yeah, and so just be careful with that you do have the risk that you can all of a sudden get a fairly hefty bill in the mail.
Well, you know, it's not, I think it's important to point out, it's not that S3 isn't designed to go viral, and that it's not that S3, you know, will limit the viewer's experience. They're not going to watch an S3 video and then a YouTube video and say, you know what, this S3 video just isn't as cool to watch as the YouTube video. It's not about that. It's always about user experience. People at this point understand YouTube. They understand how to share with their friends a YouTube link. They understand that when somebody sends out an email that has a YouTube link in it, people know what to expect. They get it. So it's about a sense of familiarity, which really is what we are talking about when we are talking about the probability of going viral. It's not that an S3 video couldn't go viral. It could. But the fact is, YouTube makes it a lot easier because it's sort of the same. It's sort of like saying, you know what, everybody's gonna go and they're gonna meet at this really popular beach versus we're gonna meet at this, you know, out of the way dive bar that nobody's heard of. People would rather meet at the really popular beach that everybody knows what it's like versus the dive bar, which might be some URL that nobody's ever heard of before.
Right, and there's a lot of people, and with good reason, who are afraid of clicking on a link for some place that they've never heard of.
That's
because it can bring viruses and everything else like that. So thank you for that perspective, Ed. Okay, so let me just give you my reasons for choosing S3. So I choose S3 when I somehow want to restrict viewership of something. So, for example, it's on my membership site, in the internals of my membership site, so you have to be a paying member to actually see it. Another reason is when, let's say, it's about a touchy subject, for example. Another reason might be when there are advantages to not having it be visible to everyone. For example, when you are using a strategy where you're trying to drive people to opt in, that is a place where you probably don't want to have the entire video available in the wild. You want to have it someplace that is it's under your control, so people have to actually opt in to get access to it. Other than those reasons, I basically choose embed. Okay, so
Gotcha.
you're going to want to go through that process, think through it carefully, and just make sure you make the good descriptions in that process.
That's right. And so another couple of key perspective points here is that you can do both. If you want to have, let's say, an Amazon S3 served video on your site, as well as put your video out on YouTube in order to get the traffic that occurs at YouTube, you can do that. I know one of the things that I've seen very often with product launches is that virtually nothing is ever used YouTube wise
Yes.
until after the launch is done, and then the videos are put up in sequence in YouTube. They're made YouTube friendly, they're made evergreen, and then they all drive traffic back to a very specific page that may, stay open after a launch is completed. So there's no reason to not do both. I will tell you that anytime you're ever doing any kind of product, obviously, that is video tutorial based, that's where it's a good idea to use S3 and not to use YouTube. But we're talking about marketing here. We're not talking about product creation.
Yes. But I think it's important the point you made about a product launch, because when you're in the middle of a product launch and you are using scarcity as one of the drivers to drive sales, you're going to get overwhelmed with traffic initially. And if you're trying to drive all that through a YouTube link, good luck.
Yeah,
So,
and the fact of the matter is, you want to be able to track cookies on that site. That's going to be difficult to do with YouTube. You also don't want there to be a distraction. You send somebody to a YouTube video, right? They always know, or even embed a YouTube video on your site. They click anywhere on that YouTube player, they're going to be taken to YouTube. You don't want to do that. You want them to opt in, or you want them to hit the buy button. You don't want to give them another distraction. So there are cases where, and again, this is very specific. Just think about the type of campaign that you're currently doing right now. If it's a time-sensitive campaign or it's part of a very specific funnel, make sure that you're not inadvertently distracting your viewer by giving them something to do, like click on a YouTube link and have it take them over to YouTube where, forget it, their day's done at that point. So that's all. That's the only point I wanted to make.